Welcome to Practical Privacy. Today we're going to look at the challenge of how to align engineering, security and compliance in a fast-moving startup environment when speed and execution is critical to the business. And I have Fred Descloux, Director of Privacy, Data Security and GRC at Nu Skin and founder of Zero Drama Security. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So maybe can you talk us through the challenge in particular that you were facing?
A year ago, I just joined this startup, fast-moving startup at the crossroads of healthcare and fintech. So imagine just two ultra-regulated environments into one startup. We were handling all this security, this regulated data, PHI, PII, name it. The startup was backed by a bank, or a financial institution. So you add another layer of regulation into all this. So we knew that HIPAA, SOC 2 by definition were non-negotiable. We had to make them work. And however, security was typically viewed, especially in this environment, in the startup environment, viewed as as blockers, as gates. So the challenge was, okay, and that's the challenge I had when I joined, how to align privacy, security, compliance, engineering in a startup that needs to move fast, try to avoid red tape, try to avoid heavy processes, and you at the end you still need a strong security. You want to go through privacy by design. You want to have a credible compliance when you get conversation with auditors and so on. So you can't afford heavy processes, but you have to go fast. So the problem was not how do we become compliant or how do we stay compliant. It was how do we make compliance part of our daily life, and make them happen naturally as part of the development of the product and working with the engineering teams.
Ideal scenario, not easy. So how did you approach it initially? Let's say that wasn't the right approach.
Yeah, we tried a lot of things. They all failed. Spoiler, of course. So we first started to treat privacy and security as parallel functions. So we have engineering is building the product, engineering is working on building everything, and then privacy and security comes there and reviews. What happens, of course, it creates friction because you have basically two teams which have different objectives. The reviews, of course, the reviews happened late. There was a feeling of being blocked, of security and privacy to becoming blockers, and also all the privacy reviews were happening a bit too late, and of course after the decisions were made. So first experiment, failure. Second experiment, we thought about, okay, remember we had this financial institution backing us up. So let's go into a more traditional compliance approach, right? Let's document. So heavy documentation, formal processes, review steps. It looks great on paper, perfect. In practice, things became slow, very slow. And if you think about it from a risk perspective, we were not reducing the risk so much. We were creating a theater with a bunch of very neat documentation. That's pretty much it. We then tried another thing is centralizing the decision point. So very much everything was going through me from a privacy and security perspective. And of course, inevitably, I became the bottleneck and things got slow again. So it was predictable, right? Especially in a startup environment. What was predictable is that engineering continued to see privacy, security as external obligations, if you will. And what happens with external obligations? Well, you minimize it, you bypass them, especially when you're an engineer and you're paid to write code and push software to production, right? So we were technically doing compliance, but we were not creating something healthy. We were not creating a culture, a healthy privacy and security culture. And more importantly, especially from the perspective of the startup, we were not building something that could scale. So we tried a lot of things, and yeah, it was pretty unsuccessful until a certain point.
How did you manage to get around this in the end?
So we eventually decided to address the root cause of this, which was the operating model of how the company was working. And so what happened is that the engineering function and the engineering team got moved under me, under my leadership. And the results were immediate because that was the actual root cause of the issue. So we didn't have to do any more trade-offs, right? We didn't have to do trade-offs because everything was coming through the same conduit, if you will. There was no negotiation between we need to deliver, we need to protect. It was the same thing. We deliver and we protect at the same time. Both matters. Um, and so we shifted from a philosophy, it's a big word, perspective. We shifted from trying to look for perfection to being focused more on the outcome. Especially, it's kind of counterintuitive when you are operating in these environments that are extremely regulated, right? Healthcare, finance, fintech. You want to get it right. You want everything to be perfect. Um, and so we had to shift from that. So we had to ask the question, okay, what's the highest what are the highest risk we want to get right? What are the controls that are going to help us mitigate this risk? Access control, data classification, encryption, logging, incident response, name it. And so what we did, we identified these and we embarked them directly into the engineering workload. We combine everything. We had the teams working on within security testing. Security testing was included right into our SDLC, our CI/CD. We automated as much as we could everything around identity, around access reviews. We made a huge shift left when it comes to privacy as well, so we could incorporate privacy input at the design stage, not just when we do the UAT. So we shifted completely left on that, and we also considered, of course, audits where we were surrounded by auditors at some times of the year, and so the evidence burden. We figured out a way to make evidence not just something that we produce, but kind of a byproduct of the normal work. Um, so by shifting all this and giving a clear like one direction and not two directions, we got delivery that came back into acceptable levels, so faster delivery. um, Vulnerabilities, we were less exposed to vulnerabilities. Audits got easier, and also more importantly, I think about from a culture perspective, my point earlier is we got the engineering team feeling responsible for privacy and security, not just it was not an annoyance anymore. It was kind of part of their job description. That was
It
a
became
complete
everyone's
shift.
priority. Yeah.
Exactly.
So if you were to go back again, what would you do differently this time?
And it's always obvious when you look back, right? But I think there's two things. Is one is push to realign the operating model sooner, address the root cause. I think we knew what the root cause was, but we were trying to address some symptoms of it. That's hence the two or three failures I mentioned, and this expression of don't make three rights to make one left. That's what we try to do. We're trying where we knew that there was the simple path, but it was, of course, if you touch the operating model in a company that is growing, of course there are some risks to it. So first is we'll do it sooner than later, and two is it's also define what good enough is, instead of trying to look for the perfection again. Again, super counterintuitive, but in practice it's relatively easy. It's like let's define minimum standards. Minimum standards, like set the bar. We know where the bar is, and you operate under this constraint. So what it does is that it reduces anxiety in the teams. It speeds up delivery, and you get to a point where this expression ugly action beats perfection. I have a ton of small expression like that in my mind. That one is perfect, especially in a startup environment. So that's, I think, the two things we would do, and I would do much sooner. Of course it's easier once you go through something like that one time.
So, one piece of advice that you would offer your peers?
Yes. So I think there's one thing that is clear in the tech industry, and I think it's valid as well in other industries, is if you put privacy and security not where the business is operating, it's not going to scale. In tech, it means you need to incorporate privacy and security within the software build, if you will. So I think that this integrating these functions is absolutely key. Compliance is the way to approach compliance as well is you don't want compliance to force how systems are being built. You want them to just describe them. It's you don't force something just for the sake of audits, and that's my point at the end. Audits are perceived are everyone is scared about audits, right? But at the end of the day, if you do your job well, if you operate your controls well on a daily basis, you should not be scared of audits. There's this analogy that I use often with college and final exam, right? I mean, if you study well in college, you're going to pass the final exam in flying colors. And you don't study for the exam, you study to learn, you study to gain knowledge, to gain skills. Same thing when it comes to audits and the corporate world. So don't work for audits. And finally, there's also a mindset. I think a mindset thing when it comes to operating privacy and security in small startups is don't be a hero. There's no hero mindset that's going to change everything, right? Think outcome, think customer. Especially with privacy and security, we're not directly necessarily interacting with the customer, but at the end of the day, they are the outcome. They are the primary outcome for this team. So keep it simple, stay calm, no hero mindset, avoid drama, and you'll be fine.
I love it. Thank you very much, Fred, for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Orla. It was a great conversation. Appreciate it.
And that's it for today. So if you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time.